we're going to talk about, and Randy and team will come up in a second, we'll talk about our Fjord trends. Fjord is our design innovation-led aspect of Accenture Interactive, part of Accenture Global. And that is where we think through design trends, the trends that impact the future of business and technology. We release an annual Fjord Trends Report every year in January. The most recent one just came out. You probably all have a copy of it under your chairs. If not, there are some on the back. And there are 7 trends. We can't cover them all today, but I'm going to ask Randy and team to come up and give us a little bit of insight into some of the trends that really are of import to them today. Randy?
Yeah.
Boy, front and center.
Yes.
Hi.
Cool shoes. All right, our trends. So just for context, so we have 28 studios globally, and each studio around June, July, right? We start collecting the trends that we're seeing in our market. And as a studio here in DC, actually we influence 3 of the 7 trends from the work that we're doing with you guys and the things that we're seeing. So it's pretty awesome to influence such a big effort that happens within Fjord. So after we collect all the information from all the 28 studios, they start looking at what are the patterns and what are the trends that are really happening globally within our clients, within the market, and where we're seeing things. And every year we look, if there is one, and this year there is one, a meta trend. And it's actually probably very relatable to some of the things you were saying, which is searching for value. And searching for value actually has 2 sides to it. One is organizations looking for where is the value on all the digital work that they're doing, and trying to focus in the areas that actually are producing value on the work that they're doing, and really concentrating on that. And then on the human side, or the citizen or users, we're searching for value in the data that we're given to actually organizations and brands and companies and products and services, whatever it is. That trade, that value trade, we're starting to kind of question it, right? We have seen a lot of companies actually being hacked, and our information is being given to who knows where and who has it. So we're searching for value, and especially around data. And in this world that is becoming bigger, in many ways we become to feel smaller because the reach that the web and all the things provided to us, we actually are searching for how we become relevant within the space. And so we saw a big trend globally about this sort of search for value. And all of the trends that you see has some form of value and value searching. So I will kick it up with the first one, which is the silence is gold. And so I have a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I'm constantly trying to take technology away from them, right? That's like the thing to do now, right? And our phones, Android and Apple, has now a little service that tells you your screen time, right? And that's a reaction to us putting our devices away, or actually to the addiction to the devices themselves. So we're finding that actually silence is gold, right? That the devices are telling us how much time you're spending, looking at emails, I think here as well, right? They tell us how much time we're spending on meetings and emails and on your computer, off your computer. But this is all part of this idea of how much is too much technology, how much addiction there is actually to devices. And as we understand, and anyone who's creating products and services need to really consider this. So if there's a trend in which devices are being put away, right, and you're creating products and services for those individuals, then you have to start thinking about, again, what is that value you provide in whenever they actually pick it up and they're engaged with you. We foresee this trend to continue. As devices continue to change, there's things that we're exploring as invisible UI, where no longer there'll be a physical product. It's actually something that is around you that you can engage with, potentially through voice or hand signals, which I know Google is actually working on that right now. So in the general sense, we're searching for value. Organizations are looking for where the value is actually happening. And in our personal lives, with Silence's goal, we are we're adding a lot of value to Silence, and we do it to our kids, we do it to others. And for us as designers, and we're looking at services and so on, we have to really account for how many notifications you send out in anything that you create, right? It's every time that an action happens, do you have to notify somebody? And at some point, when they're just going to stop paying attention to you. Because I don't know if you notice, if you walk around in different offices, there are many people who are working with their phones right in front of them and their laptops. So they're looking down and typing and working, looking at their phones and so on. So there's a lot of consumption at the moment. And so as designers, as we're thinking about things, as we're creating, we have to account for this noise. There's a lot of noise right now. It's coming from everywhere. So be mindful as you think about the products and services you design that you may be adding to the noise. So consider Silence actually as a potential way to provide value in a different way. So.
Cool. All right, so building off of that, I'm going to talk to you about our data minimalism trend, which is obviously my favorite trend, but it goes really well with a lot of the things that Daniela was talking about this morning. It's also driven not by technology itself, but by a behavioral response to the technology that we're using. So on the commercial side, if you read the trend report, what they talk a lot about is this backlash to sharing data that consumers are starting to express, right? Like we don't trust. Too many things have been hacked. There was too much that happened with the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and so consumers are much less likely to trade their data for personalized services than they were a couple of years ago. And when you look specifically in Europe at some of the things with GDPR and the right to be forgotten, companies are saying, you know what, maybe we don't want all of this data. Maybe it's too much for us to hold on to it all, to manage it all, to protect it all. So we're starting to see the pendulum swing in a really different direction there. When you look at this on the governmental side, there's a really different thing that you want to start to unpack. And I think it takes kind of three forms. The first is really less about data minimalism and more about data simplicity. So with the government, it's not about not collecting data, it's about don't collect data that you already have. So if you already know something about someone, you don't need to go out and get it a second time, because that just sort of increases the volume of the data that you have. So one of my favorite examples is the way FAFSA and IRS work together to validate when you're completing for your federal student aid package. It can verify and validate the information with the IRS without you having to go back and get it twice. Those two tools can talk to each other. And across a whole lot of agencies, we're looking at forms in general. Where can you make the form simpler so that somebody doesn't have to type in a 16-digit error code? They can have something pop up, and the interfaces can talk to each other. So really what you're asking the user to do is to validate or to select an option from a smaller list. It's actually not dissimilar from a lot of the things that we start to get used to with Amazon, where it can predict what it is we're going to want to ask for next. And so instead of me having to type it in and you collecting a whole other data set, I just have to confirm exactly what it is. So we're seeing lots of examples there, supply and maintenance, and immigration forms, and all sorts of systems. Now, I want to touch base on what Daniela said about AI as interns and like the world's best interns who are running around and bringing you all of this information, right? Now that we have the data, what are we going to do with it? There are all these huge data sets. And sometimes you don't want all the data. Sometimes it's just too much. And so we think specifically about decision makers, people who have to actually use this data and what is the right amount of choice. So in our personal lives, use Google Maps and it just tells you the 3 fastest ways home. It doesn't tell you every single calculation that it's doing or all of the data that it's collected about historical traffic patterns and construction and whatever else. It just, here's the 3 fastest ways. So I love when we can think about who is the decision maker and what is the insight that they need and how can we give them this data in the most minimal, most accessible form so they can make that decision quickly and move towards the outcome that they need. On the other hand, there are some times when you actually do need more data than that. So Daniela talked about the neural networks that don't show their work. They don't tell you why they made the decision. They just make it. or the fact that there can be a lot of bias in AI. We don't know what content this AI was trained on. And so what the behavior that we are seeing is, how do I trust that this decision or this course of action I'm being given is the right one as a decision maker? And so this is sort of the opposite of data minimalism, where there are going to be times where you need to actually give a little bit more context. Specifically, I think, warfighter scenarios, where we are talking about individuals who have literal life or death decisions to be made very quickly. And what our warfighters have told us is that they never trust the data. Even in a simple maintenance scenario, you want to actually go back and look at the dial. You can't just rely on the report. And so as we're seeing more and more critical decisions need to be made, how can we give those warfighters the right amount of context into what that algorithm is making its decision on, so that it can be trusted in the context that it needs to be used?
And I will add, I don't know if you guys do this, but I've been doing now this for some time, and when the trend came out, it sort of made a lot of sense. As I'm signing up for something new, whatever the service is or product, they're asking me for this all of this information that is not being used for what I'm getting, right? So why do you need all this information in return for me to get what, right? So do you need my address for me to get Netflix? No, you don't, right? And I know Netflix doesn't require that, but there are other places in which they're asking for things that what you get in return doesn't match. Right? So why you need my address to get what? Are you going to email me? Are you going to send me something in the mail? No, you're not. Why do you need my phone number? Are you going to call me anytime soon or send me a text? You're not. So you're starting to question and challenge why you're asking me for this information, when in return, all I'm getting is I'm signing up to watch movies on my phone or on TV, and you're not sending me a package anytime soon or texting me or calling me. So I personally started kind of rejecting some of those, but then you don't have a choice, you have to do it. And then you see how, I've been part of 3 hacks already, where you get the famous email and say, "We truly apologize that you were one of the ones." And then you start canceling things and keeping track of your credit and all kinds of different things. And then once you go through that 3 times, you really begin to challenge. Why are you giving people information and companies and so on, when the value you get in return is just not there? Right? They're not really personalizing things to you that deeply. They're personalizing the choices of movies and things you're watching, but nothing beyond that in terms of what they're doing with your personal data. So I've gone through this probably for the past 1.5 years since my information is in a lot of different places being hacked by now. So.
Cool. So before I actually get into my thing, realize we did not do any introductions. So, so real quick. Who are you? What do you do? Who are you? And what do you do?
So I'm Pablo.
That's right.
Wait a minute.
So I'm Rainy Rodriguez. I lead the studio.
Okay. Lauren Oliver. I am the group design director, and I creatively get involved in all kinds of projects here.
My name is Pablo Alejo. I am the group technology director, and so I won't get into that because it's just a whole thing there. But anyway, so
thank you, Pablo.
Yes, you're welcome.
Good call.
I'm actually going to talk to you about synthetic realities, which is really interesting. Especially, I think one of the things about synthetic realities is this idea that we're leveraging technology to create things that aren't real. And I think it became really famous when Jordan Peele did the deep fake video. So if you're familiar with what that is, it was basically he was impersonating Barack Obama, and there was real footage of Barack Obama saying these things that Barack Obama never said. And it was because it was fully synthetic. The whole thing was fake. There's a website, if you actually pull your phone out right now, but don't do it right now. If you go to this website called thispersondoesnotexist.com, you will actually see generated faces of people, and they are real-looking people. They do not exist. They are generated from attributes of other humans. And we are in a world where we're creating these things, and we are becoming used to this type of input into our lives. And that's kind of scary. We look at it from the negative of what's possible, how can you manipulate those. But I look at it in a different way. So earlier, there was the young lady who was speaking from the mayor's office, and she was talking about they're using this type of technology to train caseworkers in foster care, in foster systems. And if you imagine the kind of conversations that happen in those situations, being prepared is extremely important. However, you know, just as an aside, I grew up in foster care, so I have real experience with caseworkers who are not prepared to have really hard conversations. But if you have someone who is and has the training to have the right conversations, it makes all the difference in the world. The other part of that is how many of you love going to the dentist? You know, could you imagine your dentist actually, you know, having great, you know, bedside manner, or knowing not to stick this really sharp thing in your mouth really hard? You know, they could go through training that is very real through this type of technology. And so when we look at synthetic realities, the idea is, you know, how can we leverage this to create, you know, and improve our ability to be human? And I think that's where what's really nice about it is allows us to have these opportunities to get back to humanity. You were talking about, you know, silence is gold and how you leverage data. You know, a lot of that, the example that Randy gave where people are on their phone while they're working, we've become less and less human because we are constantly interacting with machines. Well, imagine the ability to allow machines to help us become more human. And I think that is hopefully the goal with that. And so when I think of synthetic realities, you know, there are so many upsides as well as downsides. It's just we need to find that balance, you know, and how do we do that? So, you know, these trends, to Randy's point, are all about value and what value are we adding to the people that we are, you know, working with and who we're serving. And it is going to continue to grow and grow and grow. And how we deal with that, what are those questions that we are answering? How are we challenging ourselves as, you know, what are the right decisions? What does right look like? And I think that, you know, as we continue to evolve with technology, you know, that's going to become more and more apparent. So yeah, so those are our 2019 trends.
So I will add to that. So years ago, Photoshop came into the market, and we were able to manipulate a photo and make the person look different, right? We made that choice, right? I can make somebody look however I wanted to. And maybe it was at their request that they wanted me to tweak something here and there. And that was sort of the beginning, the early stages of manipulating truth. And so fast forward to today, we can put filters on our pictures, right, with the apps that mask reality and create this, you know, the synthetic reality that Pablo is talking about, that is you, but there's this sort of kind of mask, this filter that we put in on ourselves to project whatever we choose to project. And now with the Obama video was sort of the third phase of this, which is now where you know, Photoshop was static, the filters are static, videos there's a little bit of that, but now actually there are people, there are humans who are talking to you that are just completely not real, right? In China, we had the first newscaster who was fully AI based, not even a person talking to you. And so I think we're going to be facing some real deep challenges in how much we're going to accept that as our new reality versus whatever the actual reality is. And as Pablo was mentioning, while the negative on this could be really bad, and it could be really influential in the time to come in politics and other things, whether in this country and other countries, because people may not know what's the reality and what's not. We see it from the side in which we can create amazing experiences that were never possible before with this technology, right? So while the other side is scary, right, because you may be consuming content that you think is real, but it's not, by a person who you think is a person, but it's not. But we see it as a great potential to create things that don't exist today, to help, like Paulo was saying, with you know, case workers or whatever it may be, where we can create that reality for them to train or whatever it may be. So, and we're going to be challenged also with the value of the stuff that is not real, right? As machines get better and faster, and we can manipulate things even faster than we do it today, I think collectively we're all going to be trying to see and find value in how we separate the truth versus the non-truth, or whenever you're consuming something that is not true, that you do it for the benefit of it, not simply because you're trying to be manipulated, which is really the big watch out, right? So, so I know we had a few other ones. You know, I think that from a trends perspective, we looked at you know, what's happening with the way that the world is reacting to plastic right now, and how companies are really shifting quickly to trying to address how people like globally how people are reacting to that. And it's not because it's about the plastic. It's simply because from an organization's, what's next? What is the next thing that's going to really impact you? Again, as organizations searching for value, there are things that are completely out of their control when people start rallying around something like plastic, which is our last straw, and then they have to change. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Where you know they're now their brain value and principles are being challenged because of the way people are sort of reacting to this thing, and they're rushing to find an answer, whatever that is. There are many beer companies and others who are creating, you know, the handle for the six-pack that you know, turtles can eat it, for example, if it ends up in the ocean, because it's made out of actually food. And so their companies are quickly getting into innovation because of something that just, we know that we needed to do something about it. Now there's a lot of people doing something about it. And there's the phone makers and other companies who are now thinking about, do I continue using plastic? If I don't think about it, then potentially my product can completely just fall off the market. So if that's what's happening now, what's the next plastic, right, that is going to affect really all of us? So, so I say from 2019, this is what we're seeing, and we're getting ready for 2020 trends, and we should be doing that here in the next couple months, and by next June, we should be releasing them.